disjointed reality.
Yes.
And I personally, just coming from a theater background and having experience in set dressing and things like that, understand that you're supposed to feel uncomfortable in a very regimented way in the beginning, and then things start to fall apart and they get crazier and crazier, and that's a great way to make people unconsciously realize it. The fact that people have taken it and analyzed it and all of that, it's maybe reading a little too deep in something that he was just trying to make people feel subconsciously. Mm-hmm. That's my general reading of that whole thing. You know, that it's supposed to feel like everything's falling apart.
Yeah.
So of course he's going to adjust it, and it's not. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that
it's not linear.
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I think if Kubrick had really wanted to make a movie about the massacre of the Indians and the white man's broken promises, he probably would have just made a Western.
He would have made an actual movie about it,
yeah,
right?
He would have,
yeah.
I think. Yeah, and it's kind of sad that he died as young as he did, and he didn't have a chance to make a Western.
It's true, he didn't, did he?
Yeah, he never made a Western.
Huh.
Yeah.
Weird. Well, let's keep going with the more of the metaphors that we're going to find in this.
Oh, there's more Indian stuff?
Oh, there's more. So the next one that we've got is the fact that in the very end sequence, the camera zooms in to the framed photos on the wall, and then the very center one shows Jack Nicholson there. Underneath it says Overlook Hotel, July 4th of July, 1921. 4th of July to most Americans is a celebration of independence, but according to this metaphor, it's emphasizing the fact that that's not necessarily the case for the American Indians, because we screwed them a whole bunch and they don't have what they used to have.
You know, this is again incredibly weak, because I mean, seeing that like the date July 4th doesn't make me think of the Indians, because the Indians, this is not really their celebration of Independence Day. I mean, would looking at July 4th ever make you think Indians?
No, but
No.
You know, again, I'm not part of that culture, so of course it wouldn't. You know, I'm a normal white guy in middle class America, so I'm gonna know it as that thing that it is meant to represent to our class. That's where this metaphor is going. I'm on board with you. I think that it is a hell of a leap.
It's a big old stretch.
It's a big stretch.
It's like a Mr. Incredible stretch.
Yeah, it is. And by the way, just as an aside, that particular shot is really cool. It's a really cool shot.
When it zooms in and the
slowly moves forward and closes in on these 9 pictures on the wall. And then it closes in on the middle picture, and then it closes in further and further and further. So you can
It's a great
see
shot.
Jack Nicholson standing there partying.
It's very indicative of his style, where it's just so slow, but it's very directed in some instances, and then others you don't really know what he was going after, and he was doing it on purpose. We have a couple bits more here. So we have the death of Dick Halloran. So we know that Dick gets to the Overlook Hotel. He comes in. Jack pops out from around the side of a column and hits him in the heart with an axe. Drops him to the floor, and he dies.
I think Halloran should have brought a gun with him.
Yeah, probably.
He knew what was going on.
Yeah, well, of course, when we see him next, he is laid splayed out and bleeding, and according to a lot of the reading on this, he is laying on a rug that has an American Indian design. Well, I'm going to point out, he's not laying on a rug. He's actually laying on the floor. It's the linoleum tile floor. I guess it'd be linoleum.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It's not tile. It's inlaid, so it's got to be linoleum. Regardless, he's laying on a shiny floor, bleeding on it. Now, I will admit it's got some inlays that could be, interpreted, but mostly they're just kind of half chevrons in the corners. So
I mean, I think it's fair to say that almost every other scene of The Shining either takes place in a kitchen, which is clearly tiled / linoleumed, or very carpeted. So, okay, fine.
Yeah.
There's something weird happening there. Is it explainable by not wanting to stain a set carpet with fake blood? Sure.
There you go.
Why not? I mean, I feel like that's stretching even less than this explanation.
Oh, well, I've got one more stretch for you.
Ooh!
And that's the elevator.
What? What?
We're going to go back to the beginning of this one when I talk
Oh,
about Ullman
yeah.
saying it was a burial ground.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if you think about the way an elevator is constructed, the first floor is not where it ends. Its shaft and its machinery are farther down and below. Some of it, at least.
Oh, and the hotel had a basement. That's where they had their boiler, so their
Right, so,
heating system.
but they're saying there's a shaft going down, and that's burrowing into that Indian burial ground, which is why we have the blood scene where all the blood comes pouring out of the elevator. It's like a Splash Mountain ad if Splash Mountain was covered in blood and gore. But it flows everywhere, and it's insane. And they're saying that's the release of the spirits of all of these Indians.
Because this thing is plunging into their heart. And, yeah,
And it's
all the
releasing
blood
them.
out.
Boo.
Yeah, none of it's. I mean,
That's melodramatic, I know.
the fact that the hotel was built on an Indian burial ground. I mean, Stephen King actually used that particular plot device in numerous books of his. There was like in Pet Sematary, wasn't there like the Micmac Indian burial ground where all the evil mojo came from that reanimated the pets?
It's been so long since I've seen that movie, I don't even remember.
Yeah.
But also, this is America. What isn't built on an Indian burial ground?
Very true.
Yeah.
Let's be fair.
There's probably white people too buried under my house. I mean, there's probably no, there's more likely Indians, but I mean, there's probably a
Both.
lot of dead white people.
Yeah. Everywhere.
There's
buried
dead
all over
people
the place.
everywhere, regardless of nationality, and
Yeah,
they're all over the place.
Oh yeah.
I guess this is what, the third one? We've only
Oh
made
my
it to the
gosh.
third one?
Well,
Yes.
Okay, wow, we're going to have to start talking fast,
Yeah.
as Job says.
talking really fast.
Yes.
Let's talk
Okay.
really.
This one,
Yeah.
this one says that it's about the Holocaust.
Yes, another one I found rather tendentious.
I'm sorry, we're hitting that point in the theories where I'm just going to start saying no.
All right, well,
Yeah.
before you start shouting no, let me explain this.
I said saying, not shouting.
Oh, okay. Well, before you start saying no, Devin,
Okay.
let me go through it. The first part of this is that it's all based on Nazi symbolism. The Nazis, of course, loved the eagle. They had that on a bunch of their stuff.
Yeah, they did.
It's on their paraphernalia.
Yeah, man.
Our first item that is a Holocaust representation is Jack's Adler typewriter.
And that thing says Holocaust more than a typewriter.
Well, it's a German brand,
Well,
and it's got a giant eagle spread across the front.
that does it then.
It doesn't actually explain why the typewriter changes color midway through the film, but we'll leave that. It goes from kind of a white cream color to a light blue, but I almost wonder if that's a lighting issue.
Oh, it must be.
But it changes color. But
There's no way they had two type.
No, that just seems really. Well, I don't know, maybe. But there's also the fact that the name Adler, translated from German to English, is eagle.
It is. I even tested that out because I
did too.
Yeah,
I really did it 3 times to make sure Google wasn't messing with me.
Yeah.
Let's see, what else? Oh, there's more symbolism. There is one of the early scenes where Jack is in bed and he wakes up. He's being filmed in the mirror. Wendy brings him breakfast. He wakes up at like 11 o'clock in the morning.
I love that scene, but for something else, yeah.
Well, if you look, he's wearing a shirt that says Stovington, and it's got the eagle on it. They're saying the eagle is another representation, a Nazi symbolism.
So pretty much they're saying that it's Nazis because eagles, not
That's part of
freedom
it.
because eagles.
Do you want to point out it's one of the few times I saw Kubrick really hold to something in the script, or in the book. That's the name of the school he worked at. But back to the Holocaust.
Oh, okay.
This one, what is the phrase you used earlier? A bit of a stretch? This one's a bit of a stretch. It's saying that the music that was used in the film, all of those composers were post-World War II composers, and that they were all influenced by the war.
Yeah, that's
No.
Yeah.
There's just
No.
There just ain't nothing there.
The last thing that they do is math. If you take...
I love this. Because even the people who are proponents of this theory say, I know it's a bit of a stretch, but
More than a bit.
if you multiply 2 times 3 times 7, you get
42.
which
Is representative of 1942, when the Germans really took their plans against the Jews and really ramped it up and started all of the atrocities.
Come on, you guys.
Yeah, I know, but in order to accomplish this, what Kubrick had to do was he had to bribe the people at Timberline Lodge.
Or it was a
ask
convenience.
Him, to ask him.
Or it was a convenience. But that's not the only place they're saying it's at. There are 42 vehicles in the parking lot. When we first see the parking lot.
Did you check that? I
did not count them because it is so hard.
In that movie, they do actually count it.
Oh, do they?
As they do the flyover,
that's right. They do have a graphic
in
the room 237.
But also, you guys, seriously? Seriously.
Danny's wearing a shirt that has the number 42 on it. There is the number 42 in the license plate of Dick Halloran's rental car. And do you remember when Wendy and Danny are watching TV and before Danny goes upstairs to get something out of their room, but they're watching a show and it turns out it's the summer of 42. Also, funny side note, there's no plug on that television.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah,
there's no cord.
I'm sorry, I just
I know.
42, 42, 42. You know what else is 42? Is the answer to life in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. If we're going there, we're going there, right?
That's right. Good point.
It's
so
The Hitchhiker's Guide came out. When did that come out?
I don't remember. That would have been the 70s sometime.
It would have been before the movie, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Was it... And they filmed this movie in what, 1978, 9?
I believe it was late 78, finished up in late 79. It came out in 80, I believe is how
it came out in 1980.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how old Kubrick was. Maybe he was 42.
It could have been his 42nd birthday present to himself.
Yeah,
could have been.
Let's see. Okay, according to Wikipedia, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy came out in 1979.
Oh.
So it would have come out at the same time as filming.
I'm just saying, if we're going there, we're going there.
Okay.
42, meaning of life.
You want to go somewhere else?
Actually, one thing about the Holocaust that this movie is a little reminiscent of is that at the time, leading up to and the early days of World War II, Europe's Jews were desperate to get out. And of course, they found the exits closed to them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, seriously, if you're the Nazis and you hate the Jews, and the Jews are perfectly happy to leave, why not just let them leave? Instead, they closed off the exits.
Yeah,
which is what Jack Nicholson did in the movie.
But
he sabotaged the radio and he sabotaged the Snowcat.
In the same way, though, that we said, if Kubrick wanted to make a movie about
the Holocaust, he would have made Schindler's List.
He wanted to.
Yeah.
He wanted to make a movie about the Holocaust.
And he did.
Which movie
According
was that?
to this?
I don't know.
He was going to make one, and then Schindler's List came out, and he was actually relieved because he could never get... It was going to be called the Aryan Papers.
Yeah.
But he never could quite get it together to make that movie, and then was relieved when he didn't have to do it.
Right.
So he would have done that. He was trying to do that for years. So why is it shoehorned in here? I don't know.
I guess my feeling is that okay, Schindler's List came out, fine. So you wait for your next movie, right? Because if he wanted to make a Western, he would have made a Western. If he wanted to make something about the slaughter of the American Indians, he would have made that Western. If he wanted to make a movie about the Holocaust, he would have done it, regardless of what was out at the time.
He, according to the next one, he also made this movie about the Minotaur.
Yeah,
oh my God,
this is another absurd one.
Okay.
This one I hate more than any of them.
I'm going to make this really brief because it is really simple, and then I'm going to blow it out of the water a little bit.
Thank you.
So, if you don't know what the Minotaur is, he is from Greek mythology, and it's the body of a man with the head of a bull and a really bad attitude, and has a penchant for living in mazes. The Shining is about the Minotaur because we have the hedge maze, even though in the book it's actually hedge animals that are down by the playground.
Yeah.
That's a change.
Topiary?
Yeah, the topiary.
Yeah.
Is it topiary or topiary? I never know.
It's topiary.
Is it topiary or topiary?
Okay. But the fact that, like you were talking about earlier, Devin, how things are so disjointed when you move around in that hotel in the movie.
Yeah.
That's because it's supposed to be maze-like, so that's another representation of the maze. We have Jack Nicholson. There are quite a few times where he's looking at the camera. He's kind of got his head tipped forward. He's got that the kind of blank look or almost semi-angry look. But
And the stupid widow's peak.
in his widow's peak, almost like the same stance or the head angle that you see on a bull that is about to charge. So again, that's a reference to it. The last one that I really love, which is the representation of it, is in the beginning of the movie when they go to the hotel. Danny is in the game room, and then he meets the Grady girls, the Grady twins. When the girls are there, on the left-hand side on the wall, there is a poster that says Monarch, and then it's got this strange-looking blacked-out figure with light coming from behind it that they say is supposed to be a representation of the Minotaur, but it's actually got curved legs, more like a goat, which would make me think it should be a satyr.
You know what?
Not a-
Actually, though, because this is, you're talking about, they talked about this in that movie Room 237.
That's one of the places I found it, yeah.
As they were describing it, I was like, I don't see it. It's a skier. It's a skier. It's a skier. And then at one moment, it was like, oh my God, it's a man. I see it with the hood, like pointed in the opposite direction, the way that a human's knees would be. I see it. It was like that dress, the like, is it black or blue or gold and white? It was like the moment that I saw it, I can't unsee it. That's all I see now is a Minotaur. So I guess.
Well, and they take it farther by saying on the opposite wall there is it's a piece of art that is a guy on a bucking bronco. So that's the combination of man and beast. So it's another metaphor for it.
I guess.
But go ahead.
For me, see as I might these kind of imagery things, I still don't understand why he would be making a movie about a Minotaur.
I don't either.
Yeah, I know.
That's
Like,
it's some weird subtext.
It's dumb.
Yeah, this is by far the lamest of the
I'm
theories,
sorry.
Well,
which
and
have all been
sorry
pretty
to
lame,
say.
And
frankly.
here's the problem. Here's the problem with this. That's actually a Minotaur because we all know it's a skier.
But even if it is a Minotaur, why?
But if you pause the movie and you start reading the poster, it doesn't say Monarch. It says Ski Monarch, as in the Monarch recreational ski area,
Yeah.
because that is a real place and it's been in existence since like the 30s or something. It's a local area prop.
I know.
Although what they talk about in that movie, in the Room 237, whatever, I think it is a little bit fair, just given that there is a very explicit discussion between the characters about the fact that the hotel resort
Should be a ski resort.
that it should be in there. Like, well, no, it's just no.
It's too hard to keep the roads open.
Right, but
Yeah.
so I get that, right? That their reasoning behind, well, it's not a ski resort, but then they have this advertisement for skiing. Okay, fine, but also why?
Yeah.
Like, why?
Absolutely.
Well,
why. But also, the Minotaur lived in a maze.
True.
Nicholson didn't live in the maze. He died in the maze.
Well, but he was living in the maze
But
at
he
the time.
lived in the maze until somebody broke the maze, right?
Somebody broke the maze?
I mean, Danny
Danny.
essentially broke
Danny
the
is,
maze.
yeah, Halloran and Danny would have broken the maze by bringing someone up there in the winter. That's a great point. I hadn't made that connection.
But it's still dumb.
Okay.
Absolutely
Well,
dumb.
let's keep sticking with that particular poster as we go to the next in line, which is that this whole movie was about the CIA's mind control program.
Of course.
As is everything.
Yes. Well, evidently Monarch is a reference to the program it's MK Ultra, which was a program for like 20 or 30 years where the CIA gave people loads of drugs. Sometimes they knew it, sometimes they didn't, to try and figure out a really good way to get people to confess. Basically a truth drug.
Sure.
Yeah.
Also, the supervillain in the Venture Brothers.
Is it the
Monarch.
Monarch? Yeah.
Yeah, Monarch I thought was the successor to MK Ultra, though, right?
That I'm not positive of.
Yeah.
I mean, I just did this. I looked at this and I went through some of it, and it's such
decided
a
it was
stretch.
dumb.
I mean, they're saying that it's basically you're on LSD, and that's why this place is so crazy, and it's a representation of you being broken down by the man who's questioning you. So that's why Jack is breaking down under the weight of the hotel.
Is
But-
Jack the one that's breaking down?
Yes.
It's not Wendy.
He is.
No, Jack is the one who clearly breaks down. He goes from a very clear-minded person to, in the end, when he is in the maze, he is not speaking English. He is just speaking gibberish.
Yeah,
So that's the slide
All right.
that this sets.
I'll buy into that. Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, but any mind control themes here, I think, no. It's just dumb.
Okay. We have our... Holy cow, we're on our last one.
Oh my gosh.
Another
well,
theory.
Well,
our last official one.
Our last official one, and then we've got a present for everybody who holds
Yay!
out. Okay, the last theory that we have here is that this is all about a dream. The whole thing is a dream, and I'm gonna kind of summarize these into little bits, and then we can take them apart farther if you want. There is the idea that this whole thing is a dream had by Jack as he is suffering the detox, because he's an alcoholic who's dried out, and he's also suffering from writer's block. And so this whole thing is this weird, crazy dream in his head.
Yeah, but I mean, and they said in the movie that Shelley Duvall said at the beginning of the movie that he'd been on the wagon for like 6 months.
Right.
You don't have the DTs at 6 months out.
No, that's true. But he's also, I guess, the DTs were the wrong thing to call it. But he wants a drink.
Oh yeah.
He's resisting, but the urge is still there, the craving. So that's what he's fighting.
And luckily, there was a virtual drink ready for him.
There was.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff that I've seen that says that their support of this is, the fact that weird things only really seem to happen around Jack. The ghosts only appear around Jack, if indeed there were ghosts.
No, actually, well, no, it's just I mean, everybody saw ghosts.
You're right. In the very, very end, Wendy saw
a couple of ghosts in
the
the room.
butler, or not the butler, Grady. She saw Grady. And the skeleton. He saw it all.
Danny saw all kinds of stuff.
He had a sneak peek.
So everybody saw ghosts and stuff like that. Remind me not to go to this place.
What, Timberline?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's a great way to segue into our next bit of Is This a Dream? The part about Danny is that maybe the whole thing is actually in Danny's head. So it's Danny having a dream, and it's from his point of view, and it's all in his imagination. It's not really happening the way we are shown on screen. It happens.
It's interesting as we talk about Jack, it being Jack's dream, it being Danny's dream. They talk about there's only one actual supernatural thing that happens in this movie, right?
The pantry.
It's Jack getting out of the pantry because he's locked in there by Wendy after he's knocked out.
Yeah.
But
then Grady lets him out. Yeah.
That's what we're led to believe in the movie.
Right. But I actually do like the theory that is brought up in a lot of different places that it's actually Danny.
Yeah, that Danny lets him loose because we don't see Danny.
Right.
We don't know where Danny is at that point.
Right. Because he's not anywhere. I mean, there's no documentation of him being anywhere, and I do like that theory a lot, and I also think that it lends credence to it being Danny's dream.
Or there's another version of it that it's all Danny's fault. Danny, with his shining, is actually causing all of the things that are happening.
Well, that he takes over Wendy's brain, right? Are we going to talk about that? That he takes over Wendy when she's fighting Jack off?
I haven't.
Yeah, I think there actually was another supernatural thing that happened. That was a little bit earlier in the movie when he's playing with a bunch of little toy cars.
And the ball rolls up?
And the ball comes rolling up, and he happens to be right down the corridor from good old room 237.
Right.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, so there were two things that physically couldn't possibly have happened. And then they were caused by where the ghosts took over. Of course, maybe Jack Nicholson was down the corridor and he rolled the ball at him.
Because Jack did throw the ball.
He did throw the ball.
There are scenes of him playing
and that brings up
the tennis ball.
And that brings up the weird sense of space, right? That you don't totally know where everything is in relation to each other in this hotel that they live in. So it's possible, right? He's like throwing the ball, and if everything lines up the way your brain wants it to line up, he's throwing the ball, it hits a weird angle, and it just rolls down the hall to Danny. But you don't know that. Like, there's no way to know where it actually lines up.
But actually, when that happened, when he was playing with the toys, that was right about the same time that Jack Nicholson was passed out asleep over his typewriter in that room. He wasn't throwing the ball, and then he starts having a hideous dream and starts screaming in his sleep and everything.
Right.
And so that all about happened at the same time.
There's a lot of weird stuff around that specific supernatural moment, right? Because that's also when the continuity gets weird.
Of the hotel?
Yeah.
Of the layout of the hotel?
Of even just the physical carpet below Danny.
Oh, because
do you remember that bit?
Because it flips.
Yeah, the ball rolls up to him in this like kind of pathway in the carpeting that leads into the geometric shape that he's been playing in, and he stands up and it's flipped.
He's standing 180 degrees facing the other direction.
Which is
the
weird.
same thing actually happens when Halloran is showing Wendy and Danny the pantries.
Yeah.
And they go in the pantry one way, and then when they walk out, it's a completely different area.
Yeah. So,
but those things happen all the time.
And those are big questions, I think, for me about the movie. Whatever theories I believe, it's a dream, it's the Holocaust, whatever. They're big questions because it seems like, given the rest of Kubrick's filmology,
I guess that works.
Filmology?
His catalog?
Yeah, his catalog of films.
Yes.
That he was really big on details and continuity, and so for him to kind of overlook those things seems significant, I think, a lot of times, but
there's also the fact of the sheer volume. They shot for a year. There's the sheer number of takes. He then edits it all himself. I see details disappearing. But
you want to talk about the sheer number of takes?
Which particular one do we want to go into? The Shelley Duvall scene?
Yes.
Yeah,
the fact that Shelley
scene?
Duvall was admitted to the hospital like a couple of times during the filming because she was in a constant state of
exhaustion and mental.
She was under a lot of stress, apparently. Yeah.
And that one
117 takes.
117 takes.
Yeah, that must have taken a couple of days.
Well, I have, before we get into the final thing that we got for all of our listeners, I have one final thing that I want to throw out there that I am surprised never came up in any of the research, and I've never read anywhere else.
Sure.
Do you remember Jack is in the Colorado room on his typewriter, typing "all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy."
Mm-hmm.
That Kubrick wrote. You know that, right?
No, he didn't.
He didn't?
He did not.
I thought
the
he did.
secretaries hated Kubrick because he made them type it up and he wouldn't let them Xerox it. So the secretaries actually wrote it.
Because there's all that behind-the-scenes footage of him typing away on that orange typewriter.
Right, but he's typing on little itty-bitty sheets.
It turns out he's rewriting the script, right?
Right.
Yeah.
No, I got that bit of information from an inside source, and it turns out that, no, Kubrick didn't write any of that. So that's Bupkis.
Okay, sorry.
But all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy is 33 characters. I counted.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When we see Jack in the Colorado room, and he resets the carriage, and he starts typing, if you listen, it's 26 keystrokes before he resets the carriage again. Go a little farther, Wendy, when she first discovers what Jack has been typing and she's spinning through the pages, they show 26 different pages with that text on it. So what does that mean?
Well,
probably nothing, but I'm surprised somebody latched onto it.
But as a question, like, under the heading, this is all a dream, I've only ever heard it's Jack or it's Danny. I've never heard it's Wendy having a nightmare.
Or it's Scatman
or a
Crothers.
breakdown.
Or a breakdown, right?
Her character in this movie is very bird-like in her mannerisms and her actions and her attitude. She's very timid and scared and fluttery all the
for
time.
me, she even kind of says in the very beginning, as Jack is saying, hey, we're going to go do this thing for our family, she's like, well, I don't really want to go do that thing. And so for it to be a nightmare of hers, of this is how it could turn out, the inconsistencies by and large happen when she's involved, right?
Some.
Most?
Not all, though.
But so, like, okay, the other things that happen, right? Like, okay, so Jack cheats on her with an attractive lady who turns out to be, like, a bog monster. Right?
Yeah.
Right? Her son is, like, super injured by weird supernatural things. She has a breakdown. over Jack saying like, hey, nothing's going on, the fact that it could just be a movie about her mental breakdown in isolation, that's compelling to me.
Yeah.
I know a couple people, honestly, currently,
who could have imagined something like that.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's how they're experiencing life currently, to be honest.
I always hate that, whenever a movie or anything like that, always, in the end, the guy always just wakes up, Then
yeah.
I hate that crap. So
that's a terrible ending.
I'm not buying this crap at all. It's okay. Way out. Now, nobody was dreaming.
Okay.
Can we give our gift now?
We can give our gift.
Yay!
At the last minute, we got a lucky break. There's a producer friend that we know who is involved in Hollywood.
Yeah, Lucas.
And he happens to know the guys, a couple of folks who were involved with filming of The Shining.
Yeah,
like more than a little involved.
Well, it was a last minute deal.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely last minute.
I wasn't even, I don't think, it was just you.
It was just me.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got to talk to Brian Cook. He was the assistant director on The Shining. He worked with Stanley on almost every one of his movies.
He's credited on literally every single movie.
Yeah.
All 16 of them.
And he saw Room 237 and he didn't like it.
Yeah. And so we've got, I was able to get an interview with him, and he's given us some great stuff and his impression and his thoughts on this. I'm going to tell you now, it was done by Skype, and because it was such a last-minute thing, audio's not the best. Yeah, I stopped hearing the audio issues after a minute or two, and you probably will too.
He's super interesting.
He is. It's so interesting that just doesn't become a problem. So without further ado, I'm gonna talk to Brian, and then we'll come back to you.
So it sounds like to me, and tell me if I'm wrong here, is that things weren't set in stone. I mean, it sounded like things were, you had so much going on that it was always a little bit flexible as you worked through scenes and shots. And how much of that would you say?
Oh, definitely. I mean, always with Stanley, you'd light the scene first, get all the art direction set and the dressing, and then he'd bring the actors in to rehearse and rewrite the scene and sit down with them. That would take a day, send them away, learn the lines, then come back, and then we'd carry on lighting and then start shooting.
Okay.
So the whole process was like that with him. I mean, not on exteriors on Barry Lyndon, for instance, because it was so difficult in Ireland. Ireland's very difficult, with the weather changing. I think probably, we would have recast Ryan O'Neal when we closed down after 6 weeks on Barry Lyndon, to be honest with you. He certainly thought about it, but if we hadn't had to go back to the south and reshoot all the exteriors. But anyway, of course, that's why guys like Stanley like to shoot interiors. So they can control the light, they can control everything. Well, when you're outside, you're in the lap of the gods,
Yeah, and some of the stuff that I've read is that, Stanley liked to take a lot of shots of the same scene.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes what I've heard it described as excessive before, and I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure a lot of the final takes that we used weren't, take 60. But Jack got the message, and he learned, don't really wind up until don't put too much in early on with it. Took him a little while, but the first month. But once we sorted his working hours and everything out, there was no problem with Jack.
Yeah.
Because as I said, he didn't even have a stand-in. I mean, can you believe that? But Stanley, the crew used to stand in, and then of course he'd bring in the actors to light properly.
That's funny.
So, yeah, I mean, but that's the way it worked. I mean, no one else would work like that. But I mean, it was a wonderful, it's such a holiday after working with Stanley when you go to work with other people, because you don't get lumbered with all these other things to worry about. You just get on and do it automatically, It doesn't get questioned. But, once you get used to it, I used to spend a lot of time telling new people. Like, for instance, we had 2 or 3 art directors we got rid of early on before Roy came back on Eyes Wide Shut. They used to say to me, Brian, but you've got to build the set. I said, I know all that. We've got people for 13 weeks going around London every night taking photographs of New York streets. I said, of course we aren't going to shoot. We did shoot for 2 nights, I think, on a street in London, a side street. I said, we'd be building all this eventually. I said, but you've got to go through this stuff with Stanley. If he's told him at Warner Brothers, told Terry Samuel, but he'll, shoot it all in London, it looks just like New York, let's say Yeah, they know shit the same as we do. You know? They're not bad. I mean, you know, those guys at Warner Brothers are all smart. John Calley, Bob Daly, Terry Semel, you know, Ted Ashley in the old days. You know, they're not mugs. These guys were very, very smart, successful people. And they didn't interfere with him at all, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and go on with it. But he had a winning track record. He made the money, so over the years, you know. And of course, he was an imposing person to be on the payroll. I mean, you know, he was a grade A director, and studios have got to have that. And Robert Benson, who was a very good director and writer anyway on Billy Bathgate, although it was a flop, the film. And so was Stella, actually. But I certainly have worked on some flops over the years. Expensive ones.
There's been quite a few of those out there in general.
Yeah. Amazing when you think about it. But what else can I help you with in terms of...
Well, here's the reason that we're
about the conspiracy stuff.
Yeah, that's where I was headed here, is that I've read a lot of this stuff, and just through interviews and research with other people, I found things that are wrong with these. But what, in general, I mean, what is your take on all of this conspiracy stuff?
Stanley, like all these great guys, he'll move continuity things out because if it's something in the frame, no matter how continuity is, if it affects the frame, being what he thought was a perfect frame, it would go, and then it would come back in on the next thing. All that sort of stuff. But I mean, I went to see that awful film with my son and his business partner, and we went to...
Room 237?
Oh, what a load of... We went to see it, and we left halfway through, or we retired to the bar halfway through. It was so embarrassing. How they got away with making that and getting it distributed is amazing. It was rubbish. Absolute rubbish. But, of course, there are many different things that happen over... When you think we've shot for nearly a year on The Shining, and even the little boy, I mean, if you want to figure out things, there's a million mistakes as you go backwards and forwards to the scenes months later. And also the actors change. I mean, the little boy changes in look, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
You know, all those sort of things. So there's certainly no conspiracy that I know with Stanley. I mean, even worse, the ones about the moon landings and all that. I mean, where do these guys come from? It's unbelievable. What a lot of morons. There are so many fruitcakes out there in this world. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, the moon landing is a pretty big stretch to me.
Oh, it's an absolute joke. But he was a very, very good director, Stanley. You know, a lot of people used to say they didn't think he was good with actors. I thought he was very